Welcome back to World Cup History. My name is Lavender Bai and I am your World Cup historian. With the tournament kicking off this week, I thought we would spice things up a little bit, and today we are talking mascots, baby. You know, it just wouldn't be a World Cup without a silly little guy slapped on everything from tote bags to bottle openers. But as it turns out, the mascot didn't actually make its first appearance at a World Cup until 1966. And of course, on this channel, we like to talk everything World Cup history, so I thought with the tournament kicking off this week, we would run through the history of every World Cup mascot, from 1966 right up till 2026. Let's get into it. So the first ever World Cup mascot was Willie the Lion in 1966. His name was chosen by public vote, and he was a simple, boxy cartoon with a Union Jack emblazoned on his shirt and a dream. And if you ask me, his inclusion may have just been the thing that got England across the line to win their very first and only World Cup. Interestingly, there was no plan from FIFA to ever have a World Cup mascot. This was the work of the English FA, and somehow it just sort of managed to stick ever since. Next up is 1970, and we have Juanito, the Mexican boy with the sombrero and the oh-so-chic crop top. His bright design was fitting for the first tournament to be broadcast in colour. He was an icon, a visual upgrade from 1966, and a mascot that is probably still in the top 5 you could think of on the spot. Then in 1974, we head to West Germany, where they have two mascots, Tip and Tap, to symbolize the nation's efficiency and sense of togetherness. Stronger as a duo than either could be separately. Although it was West Germany's tournament, you can kind of read the subtext here that the two mascots are meant to represent East and West Germany. This is a great concept, but the mascots are largely forgettable in my opinion. Fast forward to 1978 and the world is introduced to Gauchito for the Argentina World Cup. He comes complete with a traditional beret and a tolero, which is like sort of a leather whip that South American cowboys use to wrangle horses. So at the time, Argentina was actually a military dictatorship. So the fact that the mascot was so cheerful and unthreatening was certainly a masterclass in propaganda and sports washing. His design had no real connection to football, but in terms of vibes, his were out the wazoo. A solid 9 out of 10. I love him. I want him on a t-shirt today. Naranjito comes in 1982 for the Spanish tournament, and he is equal parts cute and cursed. It's kind of fever dream, kind of primary school artwork that they use to teach you about like primary colors and fruits. You know, the kind of vibe that's sitting in a classroom that's like, if you look at it too long, it'll give you nightmare fuel. So historically, he symbolized a new era of optimism for Spain, having just emerged from the hells of General Franco's dictatorship. He was also specifically a Valencia orange to symbolize Spain's most famous export crop. He was super commercially successful, and good for him. Then it gets really fun in 1986 when we get PK. No, not the guy that cheated on Shakira, the jalapeno pepper who served as Mexico's second World Cup mascot. He's spicy, full of personality, and incredibly divisive. Before the tournament, he copped heaps of hate, with critics worried that he was too stereotypically Mexican. But alas, he lives on in our memories as an all-time World Cup mascot. And then for Italia 90, we went a little rogue, a little avant-garde with Chow. A bunch of sticks designed to look like a footballer, with a football for a head. This one was super abstract and honestly a bit of a risk, but God almighty did it pay off. I currently own 2 Chow t-shirts. Interestingly, this was the first real corporate mascot, the first designed by a studio rather than an individual artist, which reflects heavily in the concept. The designers didn't want cute and cuddly. They wanted Italia 90 to be a showcase of art, design, and cultural identity. This is arguably the most memorable World Cup mascot. 1994 sent us to America, where Striker the dog was a familiar face to bring us through the tournament. He was actually designed by Warner Brothers, fun fact, to help Americans get introduced to soccer through a language they were familiar with. He was modeled on American sports mascots in terms of design, you know, big head, exaggerated features, simple and digestible art style. And he was super commercially accessible. And true to American fashion, he was slapped on as much memorabilia as humanly possible. In fact, this was the first time a mascot had its own dedicated merchandise campaign. It wasn't an afterthought. This was planned out from day one. He is probably my favorite of all time. I actually used to have an enamel pin of him that I lost in Portugal, and I have never emotionally recovered. Then 1998, my birth year, also gave us a super memorable mascot in Footix the rooster. Footix was so successful for France that they continued his lore in 2019 by having his daughter, a chicken named Eddie, serve as the mascot for the Women's World Cup. So the turn of the century changed mascots significantly. The 90s was peak mascot territory, so by 2002, they knew they needed to change it up a little. South Korea and Japan gave us Atto, Kaz, and Nick. Futuristic, alien-looking, and the first digitally designed mascots. It was the new millennium, and this was reflected in their technologically advanced design. These were the first mascots designed to work on websites and video games, not just merch, which you can really see in the art style. To be honest, they look like what my brain sees when you ask me to do maths. And then comes 2006, where we change it up again with Goleo and Pila, a giant lion and his weird anthropomorphic football friend. Absolute nightmare fuel. The strategy here was media friendliness rather than commercial value. Think stadium mascots that you take a photo with, not necessarily lunchbox stickers. And thankfully, that was the case because the company that manufactured the Goleo merch actually went bankrupt before the tournament kicked off. The pair were divisive, and we've not seen anything similar since. And then there was 2010, the year that gave us Waka Waka and also gave us Zakumi, the leopard. And don't get me wrong, Zakumi was that girl. The name is a contraction of South Africa's international abbreviation ZA and Kumi, which means 10 in several African languages. Fitting for 2010. Zakumi really was that girl. One of the most loved in history and easily the favorite of the century. Although it was a South African tournament, FIFA requested that the mascot reflected the continent as a whole as the first ever African World Cup, which is also reflected in other elements of the tournament like Waka Waka, this time for Africa. Iconic banger. Brazil 2014 also gave us an icon in Fuleco, the three-banded armadillo. And honestly, bonus points for picking an animal that can roll itself into a literal football. But Fuleco also carried a deeper message about Brazil's overall conservation efforts, which landed really well for them. And then we have 2018's Russia World Cup giving us Zabivaka, which I think marked the end of an era for mascot design. This goggle-wearing wolf was a huge hit, its name meaning the one who scores. He was chosen by public vote and was pretty universally loved. Fun fact, he was actually designed by a 21-year-old design student named Ekaterina Bokarova, who beat professional design agencies in the public vote. Iconic. And I even have a stuffed Zabivaka sitting on my bed. He is an icon. Then we got Lahib in 2022 to celebrate the Qatar World Cup, which was revolutionary in terms of mascot design. He was a ghost-like figure inspired by traditional Qatari headdress, and his name meant super skilled player in Arabic. Points to Qatar because I think this was a super unique way to blend heritage and culture in an accessible and creative way. Lahib was also the first mascot that was designed to be digital. Like, this was not designed to be a physical mascot, this was designed to be on a screen. And then we're in 2026, where 3 countries have given us 3 mascots in Maple, Zayu, and Clutch. Design-wise, I don't like these mascots in their 3D form. It gives like AI slop or those like overstimulating children's cartoons, but conceptually, I do love them. Maple is a Canadian moose, Zayu is a jaguar symbolizing Mexico, and Clutch is a bald eagle because America, baby. They are very 2020s coded, but I think they fall flat compared to what the US and Mexico have given us previously. I do, however, really like them when they are physical mascots in stadiums, so credit where credit's due. Anyway, what's your favorite mascot? Let me know in the comments below.